It's the kind of fight that quietly sneaks up on the boxing calendar, but could have massive implications for the super middleweight division. Bektemir Melikuziev versus Darius Fulghum. One fighter is clawing his way back into title contention after a devastating derailment. The other, an undefeated phenom with a perfect record and knockout power. They meet in a WBA Eliminator that will push one man closer to a world title shot and leave the other stuck in the logjam of hopefuls. But who really has the edge? That's what we're breaking down today. Let's talk about Melikuziev first. Bek The Bully exploded onto the scene in 2019 with that classic Uzbekistan pressure fighting style. Calculated footwork, heavy-handed body shots, and relentless forward momentum. It felt like he was destined to become a world champion before the ink even dried on his pro contract. But the fight game doesn't play favorites, and it certainly didn't spare Bek. Everything changed on one night in June 2021. Facing Gabriel Rosado, a veteran known more for his grit than his power, Melikuziev got caught. One right hand erased 3 rounds of dominance and left Bek flat on the canvas, stunned and defeated. It was the kind of knockout that goes viral, the kind that lives in highlight reels forever. More importantly, it was the kind of loss that tests a fighter's soul. Some prospects never recover from that kind of setback. But to his credit, Melikuziev didn't fold. He got right back in the ring, took on tough opposition, and started rebuilding his resume. Since the Rosado loss, he's reeled off 8 straight wins. They weren't all walkovers either. In fact, he faced Rosado again in a rematch and outclassed him over 10 rounds in 2023. It wasn't an exciting fight, but it was calculated, disciplined. Exactly what he needed to show. That he'd learned. Most recently, he squeaked by David Stevens via split decision in November 2024. That performance wasn't without flaws. Stevens landed clean in the later rounds, and there were moments when Bek looked winded, but still he got the nod. It was his first real test since Rosado II, and he passed, if just barely. What that fight exposed, however, is something worth considering. Melikuziev is a frontrunner. He's brilliant when he controls the pace, but if you can survive the early rounds and push him late, the cracks begin to show. That's exactly what Stevens tried to exploit, and that's exactly what Darius Fulghum has to build a game plan around. Fulghum is still something of a mystery, which makes him dangerous. He turned pro just a few years ago, but he's already amassed a spotless record. 14 wins, 12 of them by knockout. On paper, he's everything you'd want in a future champion. Height, reach, power, and a nice cold temperament. But he hasn't been in with anyone like Melikuziev. That said, he's been moving through the ranks at a pace that suggests his team sees something special. His last 2 performances were particularly eye-opening. Against Christopher Pearson, he dominated with a mix of sharp jabs and explosive counters. Pearson's no slouch, but Fulghum made him look slow and tentative. Then against Winfred Harris Jr., he didn't even need 5 rounds. That left hook he landed, it was clean, brutal, and precise. Not a wild brawl, just technical violence. But let's be real, neither of those opponents are on Melikuziev's level, and that's where the intrigue lies. Fulghum has shown flashes of brilliance, but we don't know how he responds to pressure. We don't know what happens when he eats a looping left hand to the liver or when the rounds drag into deep water. We don't know if his chin holds up against a puncher like Melikuziev. This is a classic crossroads fight. For Bek, it's redemption. For Fulghum, it's a rival. The winner probably walks into a world title shot, maybe against David Morrell, maybe even Canelo, depending on how the landscape shifts. The loser has to go back to the line, and in a division this crowded, that could mean years. Stylistically, it's going to be fascinating. Melikuziev is a southpaw with a body attack obsession. He's going to walk Fulghum down and throw that left hook to the midsection until Fulghum does something about it. That's his game. He doesn't jab much, he doesn't move his head often, he's a pressure machine. But what happens when the machine starts overheating? Fulghum, on the other hand, is orthodox, taller, and has faster hands. He likes to control, range, and snipe from the outside. If he can establish the jab early, he can disrupt Bek's rhythm. But that's a big if. Melikuziev is good at slipping the first shot to close the distance. And once he's in the pocket, you're in his world. That's the danger. One key to this fight might be patience. Fulghum hasn't gone past 6 rounds in his last few fights. Melikuziev has done 10 rounds 4 times. He's learned how to manage pace. If Fulghum comes in looking to blow Bek out of the water early, he could get countered and caught. But if he sticks and moves, avoids the corners, and doesn't fall into the trap of trading inside, he could pile up rounds and take this late. There's also a mental component here. Melikuziev knows what it's like to be knocked out. Fulghum doesn't. That experience cuts both ways. Bek knows how to bounce back, sure, but he also knows the feeling of vulnerability. He's been in the shadow of that Rosado loss for 4 years now. One more stumble, and it might be the end of the road as a serious contender. Fulghum is still undefeated. That comes with its own kind of confidence, sometimes cocky, sometimes cool, but it also means he hasn't been tested when things go wrong. No cut eyes, no knockdowns, no fights where the judges matter. What happens when Bek puts him in a dogfight? If you're a betting fan, the odds are close. This isn't a mismatch. It's a coin flip, and that's what makes it must watch. Both men have real strengths, but also real vulnerabilities. Melikuziev has more experience, but Fulghum has youth and momentum. Bek hits harder downstairs, but Fulghum has better movement and cleaner combinations up top. And don't forget, this is a golden boy card. There's pressure for both fighters to deliver. A boring decision won't get fans talking. They need a statement. Expect fireworks, especially in the mid-rounds. Fulghum will want to test Bek's chin, and Bek will want to grind him down body first, head later. Now, predictions are always risky, but here's what I think. If the fight ends early, within 4 rounds, it's likely because Melikuziev caught Fulghum with something heavy to the body. That's Bek's bread and butter. If it goes past 6, the fight tilts toward Fulghum, who has the better gas tank and cleaner technique when things slow down. The question is whether Fulghum can avoid Bek's early power and not get cornered. So, the official pick? I lean slightly toward Melikuziev by late stoppage, maybe round 8 or 9. I think the pressure, experience, and body work will eventually wear Fulghum down. But it's a razor-thin margin, and honestly, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Fulghum pulls off the decision by staying mobile and surgical. No matter what happens, this fight is going to reshape the super middleweight division. We're either crowning a reborn contender or witnessing the arrival of the next big thing. Either way, it's drama, it's high stakes, and it's boxing at its best. Let me know in the comments who you've got, Team Bek or Team Fulghum. And if you're watching this after the fight, tell me how wrong I was. Thanks for sticking with me, and don't forget to subscribe for more fight breakdowns and predictions.